Welcome to the Sleeping Barber podcast.
All right, V, post-pod.
Here it is.
You ready?
Let's do this.
You asked me for a new... I got a new axe. Here we go. There it is. That's all I got.
Dude! See, he said it, he did it, he committed to it. We have a new jingle. Welcome to the post-pod.
You don't want to hear me play for very long.
That's incredible. I did not expect you to pull out the axe, and that's great.
Yeah, super fun. So
now,
we had Jeff on yesterday.
We did.
Well, yesterday. We're doing the post-pod today.
Yeah.
I took a whole ton of notes.
4 pages, man. Yeah. 4 pages of notes.
Okay, I'll start with this. And then it's funny. We keep talking about the war between sales and marketing, or the gap between marketing, a CMO and a CFO, or the gap between a CEO and a CMO. And some of that stuff, the epiphany for me was that some of that stuff exists just because we design companies that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, we create gaps because we organize based on functional silos instead of thinking about organizing around a customer, like the adopt or learn by adopt.
He didn't say them all. He said there was 8. Or 7 or 8. I don't remember.
But it includes all those functions.
Yeah.
And so then you orient the company to support the functions of a customer.
Yeah.
And then, there's other challenges with that he alluded to a little bit, but you get rid of a lot of the gaps that exist because it's not just my budget. This is for the customer.
Yeah.
So for me, that was like a big one. I was like,
dude,
it's so simple.
It's so simple. The UC is such and I don't know if he coined that term, because the Unified Customer Engine, I've known UC as the Unified Customer Experience, but
right.
But anyways, I think I was blown away just with the simplicity of it, in the sense that, you know what, when you think about in that context, it's like, as a group, so say you're on the Learn team, as a group, our sole mission is to really help consumers learn about the product. What does that mean? And it could mean so many different things. Like, it could be content, it could be making sure we have, a lot of education pieces, we're getting our voice out there, et cetera, et cetera. And when you think about it in that context, it becomes really easy to say, I am helping the consumer do something very specific, but I need help on all these other areas, right? And that's where, the silos get broken down. And I'm sure there's still probably some level of ambiguity. I remember, and this is just like a personal experience, there was a time during one of the companies I worked for, they kind of went through a huge restructure, and they had marketing reporting under kind of like a sales function or a pricing function. And I remember at the time, it was incredibly difficult because as a marketer, you felt alienated because the person that was leading your function didn't have, say, the marketing acumen, and couldn't be, say, that voice at the table for us to help us bring in more budget, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe I was guilty of not buying into the whole thing, because at the same time, it felt like you're constantly educating when, marketing should just have a stronger seat. But it seems like on Smart's side, it's a lot more, it's constructed in a way where it still gives everybody the autonomy, but it also shows the value of the community and the collective. And I think that's what's really interesting about this model.
Yeah, I agree. I do. It's funny because with the scenario, I think I remember you talking about this before. If you have a finance person running marketing, they're going to look at a budget and look at, we talk about spreadsheet marketing.
Yeah.
And they're going to look at the thing like last click.
Yep.
And if there's not an equal dialogue or discussion, if it is I'm looking at last click and I'm looking at ROAS, ROI, weirdly enough, I was just looking at some of that stuff with Grace and Tom that we've done in the past.
Yeah.
And even Avinash But if you have this idea of last click and you're looking for ROAS ROI, it's Black Friday today.
Yep.
That's a thing that you obviously are going to want to optimize for today. But
Today.
over time, it's a really bad way to
Yeah.
optimize.
100%.
Because you're just going to sell more of the thing that was. It was funny. I literally was just listening to Grace talk about this, and you end up optimizing for the best sellers, not for the things that are going to drive incremental value.
Yes.
And it's just based on the channel itself. And so spreadsheet marketing does that, and it doesn't show you how important it is to generate that, from Jeff's language, the out of market demand,
right,
of future buyers.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
that is equally important. I'm not saying that the spreadsheet marketing is important, but it's not the only thing, and it's really probably problematic in the short term.
I would argue, like, if you think about something like Black Friday, if you haven't done enough of your out of market reach earlier in the year, your Black Friday, and you're just operating on, say, the in market. He called it
In market.
Yeah, so he called it in market, and you're just doing that through the entire year. You're working off an audience that you've already kind of nurtured, but it's the base audience. It's not like an incremental audience. So I think that's where, and I think one of our friends, Nick Bond, put a great post together just around the importance of brand in in something like Black Friday, but it comes before Black Friday, right? So I think anyways, the way he talked about out of market and in market, the importance of each, but also making sure that there was internal language that was using, because he brought up that one example where the CEO, it was a PR, not a stunt, but it was a PR event of sorts that happened in Australia. It got picked up by all the local channels, and then the CEO is using the language, hey, this is a great piece of like out of market content. Right. And I think
generating content.
Exactly. So I think when you get to that point where a CEO is completely comfortable with the vernacular, the language that you're using and adopting it, all of a sudden it just kind of creates this ripple effect.
Yeah. And to extend on that, the idea of a generally accepted marketing principle or practice or language, GAMP or whatever, like it is really smart. I mean, we've talked about this for a while, but I think that's part of the problem within marketing. Like we all get these shiny object syndrome, and what's really important today is TikTok. What was really important yesterday was Instagram.
Totally.
Before that was Facebook.
Yeah.
And somehow we get, what's the word I'm looking for? We're blinded by the tools, not by the purpose of what I don't mean purpose like Save the Whales purpose. I mean purpose of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Which is really around the financial language of a business, like market penetration, drive cash flow, future cash flow, all those kinds of things. So the language is really important to unify that.
And I think I think the problem with us as marketers at times is we can be very malleable, and we can just kind of like shift on a dime and have a different perspective. And I'm not saying like you shouldn't change your perspective if you've come into new research or literature. Like I think that's important, but maybe I think the word I was looking for is like actually flaky. But because like on one day we could be saying one thing, on the other day we may not be saying anything, or that doesn't align. And I think because of that, internally we get this bad rap where we're not very consistent, and we're not consistent because a lot of the things that we're planning, we're doing they're based on a moment in time. And I think we have to start grounding ourselves a little bit, and especially in some foundational elements around some of the the core laws of marketing, some of the marketing effectiveness, research that exists, and just build a foundation off of that. And then you can change some of the other tactics, but we should all have a common understanding of things like the 60-40 rule, the 95-5 rule, just so we can use that and train everyone internally about it.
Yeah.
So then we start building this foundation and this language that everyone's comfortable.
Yeah. Well, and that's the debate that's going on right now with Mark Ritson started with that article, and then it's been carrying on through WARC and IPA, and I've seen a whole bunch of people talking about it. that Americans are behind
Yeah,
in terms of their understanding of marketing effectiveness. I'd lump Canadians in there too.
I think so. Yeah.
Because there's, yeah, it's weird. I did this analysis looking at the amount of dollars spent by country, and then the amount that they spend to win a Cannes Lion Award.
Hmm. Can.
Cannes
I think it's
Lion Award, and it's not even close. Like the U.S. spends a ton of money.
yeah.
Like if you imagine a graph chart, it's like small, and actually the most efficient is Brazil. Weirdly enough, the UK and Australia are somewhere in the middle,
Okay.
and then and like this is in the billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And this is not the best way to do this analogy, I'm sure, but it was just something I was looking at. But so the idea is that like almost half of the global ad spend is spent by the states.
Yeah.
And they win most of the awards, but it's almost like the blind squirrel finding a nut kind of thing where
Yeah.
they win the most because they spend the most,
They spend the
but
most.
they also spend the most per award by far, like double or
Mm.
triple the amount almost.
Right.
And so I think there's some of that. It's not to say that you can't be good.
Of that, because the consumer at the end of the day pays our salaries, buys our products, does
Mm-hmm.
everything. Yes, we have internal, reporting structures, etc. But like the moment you feel that sense of accountability towards the consumer, I think
Mm-hmm.
methodologies start changing. Your thinking starts changing, and I think it's
Yeah,
really important that we kind of start talking about that a lot more, because I think everyone in an organization has that responsibility.
totally. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like it does. It's so simple. Like if you change the structure, you change your way of thinking because now you just reorient yourself towards
Yeah,
something different than you had before. So rather than reporting up to the head of marketing or the head of sales or whatever, now you're reporting up to the customer, which is kind of what Eddie was talking about the other day too.
that's true. Yes.
And a lot of other things just solve themselves, or the problems that you have solve themselves because you've now reoriented and you looked at the problem from a different perspective.
Yeah, because it's very simple. You can simply apply the lens like, does a consumer actually care what we're talking about right now? How does it actually help
Right.
them?
Right.
Because Jeff also said, help buyers buy,
Yeah.
right? So when you again, so using the lens of the consumer, help them buy, that's a very simple, you don't even call it a framework, but it's a very simple thought process to say, well, this discussion that we're having about this product, how does it help the consumer? How
Mm-hmm.
will it help them buy?
Yeah.
Well, it actually checks both boxes. Fantastic. I would even argue layer in the promise to the customer as a part of that thought process, right? So
Yep.
then all of a sudden now you have, just kind of like a checklist of items that you can go through. It's like, does it do this? Does it help the buyer buy? Yep. Is it putting the customer at the center of what we're doing? Is it making a promise to them? I remember Roger had 3 questions. I think it was, don't remember them offhand right now, but just when you apply that lens, all of a sudden becomes, I think, a muscle that you start building, and then it orientates everything in your
Mm-hmm.
organization, processes, where to add
Mm-hmm.
headcount, anyways, and it makes
Yeah.
you more insights and research dependent, which is something
Yep.
that a lot of organizations don't do.
Yep. Well, and there's like I think there's a Roger Martin thing around stance and your in the way you think. And so the really simple version of how I remember it anyway is like let's say you're a chef.
Yeah.
you cook food, right? You prepare
What I
food and
do.
you deliver food, all that kind of stuff. If you're a chef, but you have a stance of food is fuel,
Mm-hmm.
then you can imagine how you might prepare food. In my house, you select food and that kind of stuff. If you're a
Yeah.
chef and you think of food as art,
Yeah.
then you could imagine how that would change your perception of food and the way you
It's a
plate
great
it
point.
and present it and all that kind of stuff. And so the same thing, like a corporate function, marketing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sales, finance, whatever, can view their job through the lens of the function, or you can look at it through the lens of a customer, and that stance changes everything about how you perceive the world around you.
Yeah. That's great.
One of the other notes I had was around ESOV.
Yep. Yep. I have that too.
And I know we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but there's I just like it's such a I'm actually going to start building out like a budgeting tool or not a budgeting tool, but like a deck on how, like all the stuff that
That you
exists
should
out
be
there.
consider.
Yeah, and ESOV is really can be really powerful because it's not so much about what you're spending as far as your marketing budget goes, but it's if you're trying to grow a business, you need to have a certain level of budget to
Yeah.
make a dent. And so then if you I just think that's such a really fundamental thing that can help a lot of businesses to establish a commercial budget, not just a marketing budget.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more because I think it gives you a better idea of where you need to be to meet some of these sale targets. Because I know you and I have been a part of this, but sometimes you feel like the sale targets come in and you're like, what? How are we expected to grow that much?
Mm-hmm.
Or and we're not given the adequate money. And I guess there's a commercial budget versus a marketing budget, but
Mm-hmm.
I think if you can help an organization understand, like, here's the ESOV, here's
Mm-hmm.
where we need, this is what we're trying to do, it can kind of take the guesswork out of what you need to be spending to help
Mm-hmm.
increase that, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's again, it's something that I don't think a lot of people are talking about,
Mm-hmm.
because you're working over year, you're grounding it in things like sales, but you're not talking about the share voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because and at the end, it is a relative metric, like a marketing
100%.
budget or a commercial budget. It's a
100%.
relative metric to what your competitors are doing. So you have
Yeah.
to also incorporate that.
Yeah.
And the idea of a commercial budget is great because you've got and the idea around like putting the poker chips on all the different
So good.
spots, such a great idea. Because you now are coordinating your budgets together as opposed to like, I want mine, I'm going
Yeah.
to steal from them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not necessarily a zero sum game. Like you're working towards a common goal.
Yeah.
That was a really cool exercise. I would love to try to doing that. So the
I
next
loved
place
it.
I'm working.
I loved it so much because I even think it helps build, what the goals actually are for each discipline every year. So if your big rock becomes that one chip, it really helps saying, okay, team, this is what we need to do next year. We really need to deliver this experience or this
Mm-hmm.
learning platform, whatever. Like endless examples there. But then all of a sudden, it really helps the teams. Like, okay, this is what we really need to deliver on this year. This is our like the big rock, because sometimes we have like 5 things that we have to deliver on. It's like if you think about it the right way, the thing you're investing most of your time in is going to naturally lift a lot of those other KPIs, or it
Mm-hmm.
should,
Mm-hmm.
right? Instead of being hyper focused on, say, like a revenue number or some of the things that we traditionally have performance metrics against.
Yeah. The other one that he mentioned was the culture is behavior, and also the design component of the company helps
Mm-hmm.
impact the behaviors that form the culture overall of the company. So I'm super interested. He talked about what was the engagement rate as a, or
90s.
maybe it was just an engagement rate. It wasn't a different metric, but there was that other metric he talked about with the sales acceptance rate.
Lead acceptance rate and employee
say, whatever they are. But like those two families, they hate each other, but they have to live with one another. And
Yeah.
then if you have a metric like that talks about teamwork and collaboration,
Yeah.
let's sales acceptance rate,
Yeah.
or lead acceptance rate, like that actually is the thing you're trying to optimize for, which is
Totally.
collaboration.
Yeah.
And it's so much harder to do when it's no, I have a sales number to hit, or I have a MQL number to hit, like a lead number to hit, or traffic number to hit.
Yeah.
If they're not coordinated together, then you can see where that leads to problems in engagement and all that kind of thing, because nobody wants to engage with one
Nobody
another.
wants to. Yeah, I love what you brought it up to. Like your culture is the worst behavior you will tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you think about it again that way, it really sets the tone of what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that quote has come from somewhere else as well. I just can't remember. I've heard it before.
Yeah, I have heard that too. I don't know
Or a
where it's
version
from.
of this.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, anyways, I was trying to think about it in the moment, like where I had heard that. But I think it's just so true at the end of the day. Or actually, it's like the culture is what you're willing when you walk by, or
What brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room, or something like that?
there's that one. Oh, there's so
Yeah.
many. Anyways, I'll try to dig it up, but so many.
Yeah. Yeah, that was such a refreshing conversation, I think. Like there's just so many like so many things where you're like, "Oh, yeah, why don't we do that?" To me, like so many obvious things. Like, why don't you just put sales and marketing together under one banner? You don't need each team carrying their own flag.
Just something even as simple as like when he's talking about out of market to in market. Out of market, you're going to base and you're going to look at your campaigns through emotional metrics, where we try to justify anything out of market or brand through traditional rational metrics in terms of like, what is it doing from a revenue perspective, what's it doing. But it's like no, its purpose is to create that emotional connection with the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So let's measure for what it's actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then subsequently, when it becomes in market, that's when you can start using your rational metrics. But looking at it again as one, you can't look at it
Well,
as two different things.
So I do on that one. We didn't really get into this during the conversation, but I do think you can use rational metrics in the sense of like if you were to use CEP, so category entry points, as like
Yep.
one of the things that you're trying to target and segment the market by. So the triggers that make people buy, right? You can anchor and link your brand. You can first measure those by frequency in which they occur.
Yeah.
And then you can measure the memory link between your brand and a particular category entry point, so that
Right.
buyers remember you when they are in a buying situation for that particular cue
Yeah.
or trigger.
Yeah.
So you can use rational metrics to do that, but the way to do that isn't by saying like buy now, buy now, buy now, because they're not buying now.
No.
I think that's where emotion comes into play in those ads, because that you remember those ads because they're entertaining, they're engaging, they're funny, they're whatever they are.
Yeah.
And they build affinity towards that brand and an emotional connection. And then specifically for like the cue or the purchase trigger that you're trying to link that brand to.
Yeah. I think my only push there is when we think about those larger brand moments is what is the primary KPIs we're going to measure success from. And I think in that moment is where you can, because there's a time decay that happens. So you launch a brand campaign, you're trying to build, mental availability, etc.
Mm-hmm.
It's trying to prime them to purchase at a later point.
Right.
So I think because of that, if your primary KPI is really, fixated around some of those emotional metrics, that then you can probably add a multiplier effect to kind of help future revenue that will come from this campaign. I think that's where where it makes sense for us to invest our time in. Mm-hmm. But rationalizing it through your always on tactics, your high intent tactics that you have in market. But I think where I struggle, and again, this comes from a performance marketer.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't want like the performance side to constantly get all the credit, because it's not just the performance.
No. Yeah. No. It wouldn't.
Like,
But you probably wouldn't get the credit if you're measuring for brand metrics.
no, you
'Cause
wouldn't at that point. No.
It's not memorable because you're also talking to people when you're doing that. You're running reach.
Yeah.
For those out of market buyers, and those out of market buyers know less about you, so your brand awareness metrics are going to be lower because the people who remember the most are the people who bought you.
Exactly.
Current customers. The people who are future customers are going to have lower brand awareness metrics. So your activation tactics or performance marketing tactics
Yeah.
are probably not going to work on any of that for those people who are out of market.
You know what's funny? I know we're like going over what our typical like post pod is, but I came across
Now
this
we're just
research.
solving problems.
Now we're just solving problems. But I came across this research that kind of talked about like the 3 phases of kind of like awareness. So like there's awareness, then there's salience, and then there's fame, right?
Mm.
And those 3 things are not the same. And when you're thinking about it internally, like it's a progression. Like if you ever want to get to fame, that's like when everyone thinks about this brand without being prompted, it's just there. Like Starbucks could be one of those brands, you know, where it's just exactly, you think coffee, Starbucks, but you don't even need to be prompted. But I think when we're thinking about, you know, that those 3 tiers that you need to move towards to get, say, to that fame, it's like you can't miss all the different steps. So you can have a brand. There's another. I'm getting the research is like mixed up in my head, but there's a progression that you need to make to get to fame. It's not you can just target fame. Fame could be an end goal, but to get there, you need to be consistent. You need to make sure that you're creating that emotional connection. You need to make sure that you're investing in, you know, helping your consumer buy. Like the Starbucks app, again, is an incredible application that makes it really easy to earn, redeem, and what. So it's a frictionless experience for the consumer. All to say, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say something. I had it. It is gone. This is where we end the post pod.
Awareness, salience, and fame.
It's just, I think for me, it's like we can't just move, like have the 2 opposite things. You can't say like on the one side, I'm focused on performance marketing. On the other side, let's make sure that we're building up to fame. Like it's a progression that you need to have. So it starts like from intent, performance branding. Then you're getting into brand awareness. Like there's a scale there that we have to, as marketers, kind of adhere to make sure that we understand how we build to said fame, if that is a goal for us.
Right.
That's all I'm trying to say, I think.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's a good point. Anyway, that was a really good conversation, V.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
I really enjoyed that.
I encourage every listener, just kind of spend some time with Smart. There's a lot of great literature out there. They're doing some incredible things. And I think for us, like being in Calgary, absolutely love the fact that we have a global company like Smart really doing some great work and being at the forefront of a lot of the marketing stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, V, until next time.
Go chase profitability.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's so natural when you say it. I feel so awkward when I do that. I can't deliver with the confidence that you do it with. It's really great.
Thanks,
I love
man.
how you say that.
I appreciate it, buddy. Have a good one, man.
All right, you too.